With the world skiing champion getting... No, it's not. It's Ben Davison. He's wearing recovery...
Normatec recovery boots.
I'm in the camp of Josh Taylor, who is getting ready for his unified world title defence on September the 26th. Ben's had a massive fried breakfast, a couple of coffees, a bit of cake, and now he's in recovery mode. Ben, it's great to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. What have you made? Thanks for having me into the camp. Obviously, we're at the back at the Boxers' home, Josh Taylor's provisional home for the camp, temporary home rather for the camp. I haven't seen you really since the beginning of lockdown. What's it been like for you, lockdown? You were with Billy Joe for a while. You were with Josh as well, all in Vegas, just as everything changed, weren't you?
Yeah, we was over there obviously with waiting on what was supposed to be an imminent announcement of Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo. It didn't seem to go that way, so the lockdown happened and we all headed back home. But Billy Joe's a few miles away from me, so we carried on training when the rules allowed us to. But obviously with Josh being up in Scotland, as soon as possible we had to get away. And the first place to open up for us to be able to get back training was that came available was Fuerteventura. So we went over there, Adam Bailey's gym in Fuerteventura, which was brilliant. Got a nice 5 or 6 weeks it was, training over in Fuerteventura. Before Josh got his...
Do you mean Fuerteventura?
Fuerteventura.
Brilliant.
and then we've headed back here for the remainder since Josh got his date.
To Harlow.
Harlow, and we're well underway.
Let me ask you a few things, generic questions about. First of all, obviously you still and have always had and probably always will have a very close relationship with Tyson Fury. Do you see that fight happening this year with Deontay Wilder in your mind?
I don't really know. Obviously, boxing is a business, as we know, so I think that it all depends on if the promotional companies and broadcasters believe that they can make the money with the fight being behind closed doors, then I'm sure it would do. I don't know if they would expect pay-per-view sales to go up because everybody would be behind closed doors. But as we discussed earlier...
That's Ben passing wind, by the way.
As we discussed earlier, the revenue on gates can be extortionate. So, unfortunately, boxing is a business, so it will depend on whether they can make that money or not. They feel that they can make that money or not. What
was your take on the knockout of Whyte by Sasha Povetkin a couple of weeks ago? Yeah, I think,
he looked like he was boxing well, Dillian. And I've got to say, I've got nothing but respect for the way that he's gone about it. He's took it on the chin, not come out of any excuses, straight back to work. And I can only respect that. I think that, there's definitely something to look at in terms of Joshua finished him with an uppercut. Oscar Rivas dropped him with an uppercut. And then Povetkin's just done that with an uppercut. So I think there's definitely something to have a look at there. But he seemed to be boxing well. He was given decent information in the corner, to basically not to start hooking with a hooker, even though they're both hookers, but it just became a 50-50 in that matter. And I heard Dave Caldwell say not to keep giving him the left hook to the body, which eventually resulted in not seeing that left uppercut coming to the chin. But like I say, nothing but respect for the way that he took the defeat and the way that he's going about it and the way he wants to avenge it.
Excited about Vasyl Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez?
Really excited for that fight. That's probably the fight I'm most looking forward to and have been for a while.
Bell rings, what happens?
I really don't know. That's why I'm looking forward to it. I've seen Teofimo. I know that he's a really, really thick-set small guy, if that makes sense.
He's quite efficient when he attacks as well, isn't he?
He is, and that can his size play a factor in the fight? That's one that I'm interested in.
Do you think his we were excited about him going in against Vasyl Lomachenko because also what he did to Richard Comey, which we weren't expecting, where he just knocked him out.
I don't know because I just think stylistically it's a completely different fight. I'm interested because, like I say, I've seen him and I've seen that he's a really thick-set small guy, and I think that the size could potentially be a problem. I wouldn't be surprised if it did cause a problem for a Lomachenko. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Lomachenko just absolutely dominated. So it's a real interesting one. But Lomachenko just keeps on impressing me. He really does.
Bob Arum told me the other day that he thinks Lomachenko is arguably the greatest southpaw of all time. And he's putting him in there with Marvin Hagler, Pernell Whitaker, Joe Calzaghe. Do you think it's because Bob promotes him, or is it?
No, I certainly believe he's up there. Certainly. I think that you will start to see more fighters try to imitate that style. He'll be the next generation for fighters to start to imitate. There was the Sugar Ray Leonard that people wanted to imitate. You often see the Floyd Mayweather people wanted to imitate. The Mike Tyson people wanted to imitate. You'll start to see people trying to imitate Lomachenko, I believe.
I think we've got a group of them that are quite similar at the moment, like Alexander Usyk, Errol Spence, Terence Crawford when he switches to southpaw. They're all counter-punching, aggressive, come-forward southpaws. So they're making you fight them, and they're countering you. It's horrible, isn't it?
It is horrible, and that's a real difficult skill to
combat.
To combat and to understand. Why am I throwing when I don't want to throw? Because they're forcing you to throw. What is it they're doing that's forcing you to throw? And you have to look at the fine details to really understand why that is. For Lomachenko to be, I think his opponent's success rate average is 17% landing on him. To have that statistic while being as much of a pressure fighter as he is a real special stat. How many offensive front foot type fighters will have a defensive stat like that? Not many.
There's a couple of other fights I want to ask you about. Kell Brook, it looks as though Kell Brook Terence Crawford is close to being signed. It's not confirmed yet. Stylistic matchup that interests you?
It is, yeah. And Kell was in Fuerteventura when we was in Fuerteventura, and done a couple of bits of sessions and that with him, and had a chat. And I said to him that I do believe he could cause Terence Crawford a problem. He is massive. But he's got to do things right. A lot of people have said to me that athletically, Kell is the most well-rounded athlete that they've ever worked with. But if he's not doing, so people will say, Kell's past it and blah, blah, blah. But if he's not doing what he was doing in his prime, or he's taking a foot off the gas, of course he's going to lose a step. But he must do what he was doing before and up to that standard, and if anything, needs to be doing a little bit more to get back to that sort of form. You can't be doing a little bit less. I'll just skip on that. I won't do this. It's a bit easier to do that. That's a bit easier. That costs less. I'm not saying that Kell does that, but I'm just saying in general. And that's the conversation I have with him. If he turns up to be the best that he can be, his size alone could be a huge factor in that one.
And the other thing about Crawford, just going slightly into the technicalities and the styles, Kell's one of our most gifted in the mid-range in the last 10, 15 years, no question. And Crawford likes to operate in the mid-range, doesn't he?
He does, yeah, but Crawford's a lot better with his, I wouldn't say judgment of distance, but with his distance with his feet. Gauging the distance with his feet.
And switching.
And adjusting his distance with his feet. Giving different looks. Kell likes to try and time someone over the top of that jab, but he will have to match Crawford's feet in terms of, adjusting distance with him and staying on the ball with his non-punching activity, and I think that'll be the tough ask for Kell. But if he can maintain that, and then as the fight comes on, start to use his physicalities, I definitely think he's in for a chance. But Crawford's a real special fighter, and he'll certainly be the favourite going into that.
And finally, one other British-American matchup. Luke Campbell and Ryan Garcia. Is that one that interests you?
Interesting fight. I think Luke's a brilliant fighter. I would expect Luke to come through that. But
he's being used as a stepping stone by Garcia here, isn't he? Or they're trying to use him as one. Yeah.
Which...
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It's an interesting one. It really is, because Luke gave Linares a good fight.
He gave Lomachenko a good fight.
Which I always thought, that was what really impressed me with Lomachenko, because I thought stylistically that is the worst style matchup for Lomachenko.
Long, southpaw, technical.
But he still went in there and got the job done.
Yeah.
I said to everybody that asked that will be a tough fight for Lomachenko. But I think that it's an interesting one for Golden Boy to be making that fight, because they all know Luke's a really good fighter, but they're willing to put Ryan in there. I think a lot of people underestimate Ryan Garcia. But I do think that Luke will be the favourite, or should be the favourite in my eyes, going into that fight.
By the end of 2021, will Tyson Fury still be the number one heavyweight in the world, and will he have beaten Anthony Joshua?
I believe so, as long as the fight gets made. I believe that will certainly be the case. I don't see anybody in the heavyweight division beating Tyson. And that's that.
Cheers, mate.